go. All right. So for those of you who were or were not here formerly, you can either raise your real hand, or if you are not on video with us today, you can raise your virtual hand. Who was here last week? I think I remember everyone who was and was not, but I want to fact check myself. Very good. Okay, that is what I thought. Thank you very much for that. Very good. Thank you, Garrett and Riley. Destiny, yes, I see you. Excellent. All right, so for the few of you who were not here last week, my name is Kira Dalton. I am the one you're getting all the emails from on the career side. I am the primary career coach for the full-time MBA program. And this is our second of 4 career workshops. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen here. As a quick caveat, these are meant to be pretty informal, supposed to be obviously informational, and hopefully answer a lot of the questions that you have coming into the program while you still have a little time to mentally digest the information before you get here. So if you have questions or need clarification along the way, feel free to take yourself off mute and just ask the question. We should also have a little time at the end for question and answer as well. Sound good? All right. So today we're going to talk about building a compelling MBA resume. Now, even if you were a business student in undergrad, you may find that our template that we recommend that you use, or actually I should say require you to use, is very similar to a lot of undergraduate business schools. You may notice some slight differences, and we'll talk about that as we go along. So in terms of our agenda, we're going to be talking about how having a standardized MBA resume helps you, what employers are looking for when they look at MBA resumes versus just kind of candidates at large. Why are we doing this now, right? It is June, it's not even July. You're like, I start the program in August. Why do I need to do this now? We're gonna talk about that. The resume template, we'll do a quick review, look over what makes a strong bullet. This is where I'm going to get much more nitpicky on you. This is where most of the students say that I am especially helpful. Amongst other things, early on in the journey is really nitpicking on your resume and asking you a lot of follow-up questions to make sure that you have presented the most useful information possible. Sometimes people start with one bullet about how I was just an inventory manager. I didn't really do a lot. And I asked them questions, and it turns out that they started a new like Lean Six Sigma program and saved the company like millions of dollars. That's kind of something that we want to remember. And sometimes you just don't remember because it was an everyday part of your job. So that is what I and the rest of the career coaches here are here to help you with, specifically when it comes to resumes. We're going to do a little exercise called Dissecting the Ad that I have borrowed from one of my mentors that I think is just a great way to think about how you position your relative experience for a recruiter based on what they are looking for and not necessarily the things that you want to talk about, right? If those things are not congruent. At the end, I'm going to share those dates that I said I would set up. You probably all saw them hit your Google calendars yesterday. Some specific conversations we're going to have space for international students, and also for those interested in potentially attending one of the recruiting conferences. So National Black MBA Vets, Ramba, and Prismatica. And then all of the Moodle assignments specifically related to career that you've been able to see kind of a summary of, those will all be live for you by end of day today. I have a few last minute little tweaks to make before I turn that on, but that will be live before end of day, and I will send out an email to you all when that goes live. So in terms of resumes and why this is important, we talked a little bit about this last week, right? I had that graphic that was like a pyramid of how employers hire and look at talent, right? They're looking at internal candidates, they're looking at referrals. That is how they get the bulk of their candidates to put into what we would call like this recruiting pipeline. This is representative of a typical MBA job funnel. And I would say 100 candidates is actually a pretty conservative estimate. It can be 300, 500, 800, 1,000 candidates applying for these roles where there's one position, especially at some of the larger Fortune level companies. So just something to keep in mind, right? Every step in the process is important. your resume showcasing the skills to the best of your ability. Once we have, say, even in this example, 100 people who apply, 10 to 30 are going to get interviewed. And that's number is going to be based on ultimately, right, how many offers they're going to make. If they're only going to make one offer, they're probably going to interview 10 people or less. The only way this number is getting higher is if I have multiple roles that are basically the same job open. So then we have people moving from round 1 to round 2, where again, I'm interviewing 3 to 10 people. Occasionally you'll get 3 or 4 rounds or a take-home assignment if they want to test any kind of technical skills, Excel, writing, and then there's background check and offers, right? So if you have at least 99 other people in this bucket with you, not accounting for timing even, right, of when the recruiter is going in to capture that talent, you want to make sure you stand out. A lot of times in job descriptions, I hear students say, I meet all these criteria. Yes, and probably at least 20% of the applicants do. So then how do you go from, top 20 to top 5 or 10? That's some of the things we're going to talk about today. So employers want a lot from candidates, and a good resume is going to demonstrate most of those attributes pretty well. We can see here going down the left side, right? These are a lot of kind of the main buckets, that employers are looking for when they read over resumes. So technical skills, if there's anything that's going to knock you out, if you need to have a certain degree of statistical experience or ability to code, right? Those may be knockout components. We're going to look at intelligence and creativity, communication, teamwork, leadership, and professional presence. And these are the different areas, right, throughout the application process that I'm going to use to assess each of those capacities. So your resume, right, if we look at this, what do you see about the resume and the interview?
They cover most of the skills pretty well.
Correct. So they are going to cover the bulk of each of these categories, whereas cover letters, networking, resume, whatnot, they're only going to cover partial. And excuse me, I meant to call it networking, right? Networking and interviewing is where you're going to get the most bang for your buck. That doesn't mean you don't want your documents to be in order, but it also kind of feeds into the idea that we want you to think about networking as a key part of this process and approaching networking from a learning perspective, which we're going to talk a little bit about later on in orientation. So a quick poll for me in the chat. How many people feel incredibly confident about doing your resume? You're like, I've got this down, Kira. You're going to read my resume once and be like, this is the person who should be the poster child for resumes. Like, put my resume up on the wall for everyone to see. It's fantastic. Let's see here. Where's my chat thing? I really want to see what people have to say here. And then who feels fairly confident? Like, yeah, I feel like my resume is pretty good, but the first draft might take a little while. So to be honest, I really need some help. I have no idea what I'm doing, or I came from liberal arts and I don't know what a business resume looks like. All right, so we've got a few incredibly confident. Okay, so I'm gonna grill you guys extra hard when you come in. I will make mental notes later afterwards. And most of you look like you feel fairly confident. Okay. This is a good indicator for me. I'm glad that you have a relative degree of confidence. You're not starting from square one. I think that'll be helpful. I will give the caveat that if we rip your resume apart, don't be offended. That's our job, right? We're here to help you be successful as coaches. And part of that is bringing out your best and looking at things through the lens of an MBA, right? Which may be a bit different than how you've approached things previously. So why use this template? All top business schools have a standard format, and it's pretty much the same. You can even Google other MBA programs, most of them on their careers homepage will have a sample of their template. It's basically the same. When I was at USC and Pepperdine previously, it was the same. It increases the ease of review for recruiters, right? I've heard people argue, don't I want to stand out visually? Don't I want to make it colorful or add images and stuff like that? No, you want to, in this instance, fit the recruiter's expectation for what an MBA resume should look like. It makes it easier for them to skim, right? Because they're only going to spend about 5 to 10 seconds looking at it. And it helps them to be able to easily identify your achievements if you are structuring this in the correct manner. So another benefit of using a template is that you get to spend your time really polishing those bullets instead of formatting, right? I'm going to share a little bit with you about a company called Meridian, which is actually real people and not an AI, who we give the resume template to, and we ask them to help you get everything straightened out in terms of if you submit something where the formatting's a little bit off. We ask them to help you brush that up so that then when you meet with us, we can focus on polishing those bullets and the content as opposed to spending a lot of time on formatting. It also helps present your cohort as visually united, and it helps us be able to easily distinguish specialties and areas of expertise. So why do you have to do this now? For those who were here last week and those who weren't, this is a snapshot of fall recruiting. There is another wave of recruiting in the spring that generally starts in January, but one of the biggest faults for those of you who watched the video last week, right, is people miss opportunities just because they're not prepared. They don't know when the fields that they're interested in recruiting for have their MBA recruiting. So we want to prevent that from happening. And one of the ways we're going to do that is by getting your resumes ready to go by the end of the first week that you're here, right? By September 1, I want all of you ready to go. There will always be things you're working on. Your resume is a living document, but you should have a working version that you can present to someone by the 1st of September. So you'll see here, right, some of the national conferences, primarily September, October, and for those of you who've been paying attention to the emails, you've seen already, right? There's been some companies that are offering pre-MBA kind of introductions or chat sessions like Amazon, some of the consulting and financial services firms, even before you start the program. So you want to be ready. And again, a reminder, financial services, consulting, rotational or leadership development programs, all of those tend to start recruiting in the fall and are mostly done by Halloween, the end of October. So what does this template look like? This is generally what it looks like. You're going to use this for all your on-campus activities, for any facilitated recruiting activity that we have for you here on campus or through alumni, for treks, for national conferences, basically anywhere you're going to be approaching folks, either professionals, hiring leaders, or recruiters who regularly work with MBAs. If you have a very kind of specialized thing that you're trying to pursue that is specifically in, say, like entertainment and media, or something where you would need to demonstrate other particular skills, say, for example, if you're going for something very analytics heavy, we can move your additional information section up towards the top to put all your coding skills up there. But I can help you all with that on a one-off basis. Generally, right, you still want to have it used as format. Excuse me. All right, and then the format, 1 page. It doesn't matter if you have 1 year of experience, no years, or 10 years. We are going to get you down to a page. I know for some of you that might feel terrifying. You say your resume is multiple pages long. How are we going to do that? Again, right, that's my job. And we're going to help you get the most bang for your buck. It is possible if you are still in a place where you're considering applying for things that are different in terms of different functions. Say you're interested in maybe general corporate finance and, I don't know, marketing or supply chain. You might have one resume that highlights more of the experience in marketing and one that highlights more experience in the other area. But at the end of the day, right, the experience you have is the experience you have. So if you have less than 3 years of experience, doesn't really matter what you're applying for, your resume is probably going to look pretty much the same. If you have a little bit more experience or you did a ton of internships in different areas, that's when we can pick and choose a little bit more to tailor the resume for the specific job functions. But again, I wouldn't say anybody would need more than 2 or maybe 3 different versions. It's just not necessary. So one of the main things you want to look at here is making sure you have a personalized LinkedIn URL and then the all caps headers. It's just easy to help it be visually separate. And again, the career resources webpage, where I have links to all of the documents, the step-by-step instructions of how you're going to do the first version of your resume. That is all in the career resources Moodle for you and is linked from the orientation page. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time anymore on that. So what makes a strong bullet? A lot of it is about qualifying and quantifying, right? Show me scope. Something that one of my colleagues said recently that I really liked is, after I read a bullet, I should be able to understand how good you were at something, right? I just don't want to know that you did it. I want to know that you did it really well, who it affected, and what the outcomes were. So that can come across in cost savings, revenues, scope of impact, right? Is it globally? Is it nationally? Is it regionally? Is it across a team of 600 or a team of 10? We're also going to look at scope of responsibility. Is it over the number of people you were responsible for supervising, or number of countries or regions? Does it have to do with new marketing campaigns that had a $20 million budget, right? You can tell me the area of expertise and how much experience and exposure and responsibility you had by including those numbers. And a lot of times people say, especially if it was an internship, right, you didn't get to stay through the end of the project and kind of see what the outcome was. You can still talk about how this impacted the project, right? Maybe you cut 6 months off the deliverable timeline, or it can say something like, this was projected to reduce raw materials costs by 10% year over year for the next 8 years, right? You didn't get to see what it did, but you did start this project because of the projected benefit. So we want our bullets to be effective and efficient. Lead with the strongest action verb possible and make sure you vary them, right? Shouldn't say like achieved, delivered, every other word. In an ideal world, you won't have the same action verb starting any of your bullets. It's hard to make them all different, but I don't want you to be using the same verb more than maybe twice. And if you're having trouble, again, in the resume guide and some of the examples that we have for you, we have lists of alternate verbs. You can also Google just verbs for resumes and you'll get hundreds of different words you can use. Scope and scale. This is one place where the grammatical norms for numbers don't necessarily apply. I know technically if the number is under 10, you're supposed to write it out. In the case of a resume, I recommend using digits regardless, because it just makes an impact, right? It's easy for me to differentiate on the page, especially if you're putting dollar signs or percentages behind it. Ensure top to bottom progression with multiple roles. So this is something that I see people get stuck on frequently. Say you had 3 jobs that literally were exactly the same. Instead of changing the name of the company and the location and just copy pasting the bullets 3 times, right? That's not adding value. If I have a total of 9 bullets, then what I would do is put the least important 3 bullets under the oldest job and then build them going up, right? Next important 3, next important on the very top. That way, even though you were doing the same job the whole time, it creates this idea of progression, right? That you grew in responsibility. Another thing you can do is put the job title, the company, the header, and not put any bullets. If you had, say, an internship or a job that was not at all related to what you want to do, but you want to show that you were employed during that time, you can just have the header section without any bullets to save space for content in the areas that are more relevant. Be confident and proud of what you've done. There is a time for humility. This is not it, right? You want to highlight kind of greatest hits, right? What are your superpowers? What do you do the best? And again, how do I know that you're good at it? So I'm just going to let you look here. This is kind of, this was from, I think, last year's cohort. Bullets, what they started with, and then where they eventually got to in terms of description. And then I will show you one other example and two different ways that it was rewritten. So this is not an exercise you have to do exactly, but I think it's a great visual framework. And I borrow this from a dear friend and mentor who I worked with at the University of Southern California, John Bertrand. He was also the head of Deloitte recruiting for about 20 years before he switched to higher education. And it's just a wealth of knowledge. So, what I generally recommend is in looking at a job description, right? It's not just a job description of what you're going to do, it's an advertisement, right? Of what they're looking for, what qualities, what experience. So again, whether you use colors, you underline, you circle, whatever it is, go through and look at key terms. Look at action-oriented words, achievements or value adds. Also, it's nice to look at the difference between like the minimum or the basic qualifications, and then if they have like a preferred or nice to have section, right? Any candidates who have those nice to haves, they're going to get to the top of the list. So it's important to also see how the employer is prioritizing these different experiences and skills. So I like to even go through whether it's based on these different types of descriptions or just as I read along, even in the job description or the description of the team, what words stand out to me and how often are these words occurring. So after you go through, again, you don't have to do it exactly, but you can see, right, words, skills, industry language that is used repeatedly. Those things are going to be really important for you to highlight in your resume as much as possible. Now, if you don't have some of this experience, right, this is the advertisement, the job description, it's also like their wish list, right? In an ideal world, I want someone who has all of these things. I recognize as a recruiter, I may not get all of those things. But if I find people with 50 to 70% of that, I'm probably going to be in good shape. Another way that I've had students do this in the past is to just literally copy the job description from the website, throw it in a word cloud creator online for free, and see what words pop out, right? So however your brain works best, if you're more of like a circle and add and kind of process oriented person, or you just like to see it visually, find something that works for you that helps you understand what the employers are looking for. So in the additional skill section at the bottom, you definitely, I would say, are required to include computer related skills, especially if you do any kind of coding, statistical analysis, right? Python, R, Stata, Excel macros, something that involves some degree of technicality, or if you have any additional certifications, right? Like if you have a CPA, a CFA, Lean Six Sigma Green Belt, whatever that is, work authorization, particularly if you are fluent or a native speaker of a particular language. I found for jobs that are multinational, that can be an advantage, right? If you have the ability to talk to home offices in different areas or clients in different regions. Unique technical skills, we talked about that. You could also, right, if you have an analytics or coding bent, you can put a link to a GitHub on here as well with coding samples. And then when you list hobbies or interests, this is not required. It's not something I'm going to hire or fire you for. It is something that can often be a conversation starter, right? But I don't want to just see, that you traveled. I want to see that you backpacked on 5 continents, right? Or instead of running, you've completed 7 triathlons, right? Be specific. Avoid controversy. Don't give someone the reason to pass you by. So you don't need to talk about politics. Very specific, like religious organizations or volunteer opportunities that could be seen as controversial for a potential employer. Obviously, if it's an employer that you think aligns with certain interests that you have and you're not sure if you should put it on there, you can always ask one of us and we'll tell you. But generally, it's safer to leave it off and leave that for the interview part of the conversation. Again, if it's something you feel like is relevant. So for the career Moodle site that you will all have access to shortly, again, that's going to have the resume template that is a Word document with the formatting. You can just copy paste and dump what you already have and then start editing the content. There's going to be the style guide to remind you about all of the punctuation, all of the line formatting, and the instructions for initial review by Meridian. So what's going to happen is in the instructions, there's a link to the Meridian website. You're going to go to the website, upload a Word version of your resume so that they can make comments and edits in the physical document and send it back to you. Usually they do that within like 48 to 72 hours. You're going to take that resume and the notes that they made, you're going to make edits. So this will be then your second version. And that's the version you're going to send to me or Tracy or Jacob for our notes. As I said, they're third-party consultancy and they work off of the rubric that we give them. They will get you, say like 70% of the way there. That's really what we're looking for. So by the time we get the resume, we're working on the content in the last 20 to 30%. It's not going to be perfect, right? Because they don't work exclusively just with NC State students. But again, in terms of formatting and the basics of bullet structure, they're going to get you a long way. And again, you want to send that second working version to me or Jacob or Tracy by August 1st. So if it takes Meridian a day or two to get you notes and you want to have a few days to noodle and think of new content and whatnot before you send it to us, I would recommend sending your working version to Meridian at least a week before the 1st of August. For those of you who have a working version now that you feel pretty confident about, you can copy paste that into our template and then send that. Maybe make a few edits based on what you've learned today. But again, give a little bit of a buffer, right, for you to get those notes and to be able to incorporate those notes before you send it to one of us. Otherwise, a lot of the notes that we would send you are going to be very redundant to what Meridian sent you, and it's not going to really save you a lot of time. So dates of awareness for those specialized conversations that we talked about in terms of internship recruiting as an international student, follow up to talking about the recruiting conferences. Our last workshop this summer is Wednesday this same week. And we're going to go pretty deep into what the conferences are, who's a good candidate, points you should consider. And then this is going to be a follow-up conversation for people feel like there's a good chance that they would want to attend one of these conferences to really be able to iron out your specific questions and concerns. I did add this additional session here. Instead of having a second one on recruiting conferences, since the timing is before we actually talk about recruiting conferences, I just wanted to have a space that was more applicable for everyone who has questions about internship recruiting. One of the things I've asked you to do in the setup career assignments is to schedule an appointment with me or Jacob or Tracy. In addition to that, I think it's incredibly beneficial to have group conversations about things like recruiting because a lot of you are going to have the same initial questions. and to be able to have other people ask that and share the answers in a communal space, I think is great community building for you before you even get here to the program. And again, it just helps you sort of know the lay of the land before you get here in terms of people who might have similar interests as you that you could maybe team up with in terms of sharing research and whatnot as part of your internship search. And you've probably noticed in general emails, as I get opportunities, I will send them to you. So specifically about these pre-MBA programs, there's been a lot more of those sending out that we've received this year compared to the last 2 years. So if you get 4 or 5 emails from me a day, I'm not trying to be redundant. I'm just sending it to you as soon as I get it. So you have as much time as possible to consider all these opportunities and then decide what's right for you in terms of if you want to apply or participate. And then this is just a reminder that you all will have access to all of the career assignments by end of day today. Now, this includes links to instructions on how to access our different online resources. So one thing I would recommend that anyone look into, but particularly if you're interested in financial services, any sort of consulting or strategy, is Case Coach. And that is a platform that will walk you through mental math exercises, a basic scorecard that a lot of consulting firms use to break down candidates in a case interview. Even if you're not interested in consulting, a lot of companies are using mini cases now as part of the evaluation process. So to have a basic concept of what casing is and how it works is going to be beneficial for any of you. It can take a little bit of time, so that's why I'm recommending you maybe take a quick walkthrough at least before you get here, so you have a sense of if this is a tool you would want to carve out time in your schedule for once you arrive on a regular basis, because they do have quite a few resources and online cases that you can assess. And I have been talking about the career resource page and the orientation Moodle. Moodle is the general platform, right? Like a Blackboard or a Canvas or whatever you might have used previously. There is the career resource page, which is what you're going to use. It has all the templates, all the resources for you from the career services group that you're going to use throughout the entire MBA program. And most of what you've been using up to this point is the orientation Moodle, right? Which Vanessa and the folks in admissions and advising have set up for you. That's where all of the career assignments live. But a lot of them, again, will link to that resource page in terms of the resume template and whatnot. So I have shared quite a lot with you in a pretty brief amount of time. I don't want to take up too much time talking about resume basics because I know it can be more valuable to actually have conversations in real time related to the questions that you actually have about these things. So who has questions? Either take yourself off mute, raise your virtual or physical hand. For the benefit of the order, what questions do you have?
I had a quick question. I just wanted to make sure I got my to-do list pretty much ironed out for the summer. So along with the section 1 course that's due August 1st, we also want to do that first draft of the resume, get it pre-approved and then sent into you also by August 1st. So that's the section 1 course, the resume, and then the case coach to walk through that if applicable, and as well as just the following meetings through July. Do I have that? Does that sound about right?
I believe so. When you say the course, you mean like the different career assignments?
That as well. I did mean that, but I was also talking about there's like a section 1 boot camp that I believe they wanted us to complete before August 1st.
Is that the did that come from like Vanessa or Nicole?
Yes, I
You know?
believe so.
Yes, then that would be separate. I know it's confusing. That is related to your academics in terms of course prep work. Anything that I've sent you will specifically just be career related. So
Okay.
let me show you the difference here.
And the career assignments that are on Moodle, those are also due August 1st.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so I can show you quickly actually. So this is, right, what the general orientation Moodle from Vanessa and all the admissions folks looks like, where it talks about full-time MBA orientation. This will look a little different because I'm an admin, but it should be basically the same. And then you'll see this career pre-work. This is where we have, right, the general information that was posted up till now. And then these are all the things you want to do, sorry, Jason, by August 5th. So we give
Okay.
you a little bit more wiggle room to do those by August 5th, but we want to make sure it's all done before you start orientation.
Okay. Do you mind scrolling up to the top real fast for me? Just so I can see the
Top of the page in general.
Yeah.
So
Just
this
make
is
sure.
the
Yep.
one that says fall 24 full-time orientation. And
Gotcha.
then I'm going to show you briefly, just because it's easy and I'm here. When you log into Wolfware under projects, you should have Jenkins full-time MBA career resources. So on that page, you will see, right, it says Jenkins full-time MBA career resources. So that's how you can differentiate the two. I know it's a lot
Gotcha.
since most of the content is similar and there's a lot of new faces you're getting to know, but you can also see here on the sidebar, right, like all the career team. So that'll
Gotcha.
cool.
Cool. Thank you.
Awesome.
Well, I had one question too. I know for like leadership development programs a lot, you're going through different specialties within one organization. So how would the approach for resumes be different than if you were applying for one specific kind of section or job? Like I guess I'm used to applying for more marketing roles, but for an LDP, you really kind of have to show a range of skills. So
Yeah.
wondering how do you do that without, sacrificing all the specific inputs that you've done in other roles?
Yeah, great question. So part of it will depend on, right, like the experience you actually have. And in the leadership development program, is it a rotational program across like marketing, across finance, or is it across like marketing, finance, and HR, right? A lot of them will be specific. Like they'll have, say, 10 different departments that might have an intern, but they're going to pick you to rotate across one function based on their needs and which department they feel like you fit best. So part of that's going to come from the job description and us understanding, is it rotation across one function or multiple? And then part of it will be in the job description, right? How specific and technical is it? A lot of times those LDP descriptions are terrible and they just say, we want you to have good leadership and communication skills. And you're like, okay, that's everybody, hopefully. So how do I stand out? Usually then it is focusing on impact related to the things that are most interesting to you. So if you have a lot of experience in marketing, are you showing, you see they have rotations in global marketing, in supply chain, in product marketing. Say it's a really competitive company like Estee Lauder, McDonald's, large Fortune company, then my approach might be, balance your resume out with, yes, the goals of what you want, right? If you're pivoting to like supply chain or product management, and maybe as a backup, is it more important for you to be at this company or in the function that you want, right? Can you switch either industry or function rather than trying to do both at the same time and kind of give yourself a buffer? Like, would you rather have a really great marketing internship where you'd be more competitive, right? So again, a lot of those are going to be specific to a person and we can talk more about that. But in general, I would say you want to put your greatest hits related to the jobs that you're the most interested in doing moving forward. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you.
So even if you were mostly in marketing, but you handled budgets and you want to go into finance, that's the kind of thing I would highlight.
Got it. Awesome.
Yep.
So much.
Awesome question. Very good. Right. Let's see. Make sure everybody. David.
Yeah, sorry if I got this wrong, but I think you said earlier that like it's probably good for us to like schedule an appointment with like career services person like you. And I was wondering if like we should like do it through like an email like you sent from like the last like meeting, or is it through like the career services like Moodle website like officially? I wasn't really sure which way will be preferred.
That is a great question. Let me pull something up here and I can show you.
What's the timeline for that? When should we have our first one done by?
Before August 5th. It's all before August 5th. So you have a little bit of time. I would say do that after you've done some of the other assignments, so we have a little bit more stuff to talk about. Here we go. Oh, so great question, David. Let me share my screen and I can show you. So as part of your assignments on the Career Moodle, it'll say for you to create your profile in 1220, which is our student tracking system. And this is where you'll also go to RSVP for events that we have for you and also to make appointments. So if you click on appointments here, it'll default to this view. You can also go to calendar view. I usually don't do more than a week at a time. Something tricky where people do get stuck is, say, for example, you want an appointment today, but you don't see any, and you start clicking here or up here. Maybe it won't let you do it anymore. It used to let you do it and try to request something. Maybe they fixed that bug. You can only request an advising appointment during one of these gray blocks. I don't think Ed should show up for you all because he is our alumni coach. So if you see Ed, you can disregard that. I would say look for me or Jacob or Tracy or potentially Annie if she has any slots open. But this is where you'll go to schedule those appointments. You just click on it. You can then book an appointment. You can just pick anyone if you don't know what your topic is, 30 to 45 minutes, which time slot, and then if it's a day that I'm in the office and you're here local to Raleigh, it'll say in person as an option. Or if it's a day that I'm remote and I'm working from home over the summer, then virtual will be your only option. And then you can also go down here and book, and afterwards, obviously go to your homepage and cancel. If you can't find a time, hopefully you guys won't have this problem now because there's enough of us with enough appointments that it shouldn't be an issue. But if, say, further into the semester when it gets really busy with recruiting and whatnot, if you have something that's urgent, like what we would call an exploding offer, where an employer said, okay, Jason, I want to make you this offer for this fantastic internship. You have till tomorrow at noon to tell me whether or not you want this. First, that's terrible. Hopefully they give you at least a few days. But if they don't, and you go online and there's no appointments available, you can always email all of us. Usually I recommend in those instances where you have something time sensitive, you send out an email to all of us saying, hey, this is the situation. Does anyone have 20 minutes in, the next, before basically 10 a.m. tomorrow? And then what we'll do is just reply all so that once someone has scheduled with you, we know that you've been taken care of. Yeah. Cool. Very good question.
I just wanted to quickly ask, I was checking my emails about 1220 and I thought I signed up for it, but I don't, is that through the Moodle website or
Yes.
okay.
Yes. So you don't have access to view that yet. So if I
okay,
go
okay.
to, I know you've probably had to sign up for like 50 different things already. When you go into the Moodle, this is the career website. I'm going to go back to my orientation website. So once you go down to career, and then you can't see all of this right now because it's hidden. It's hidden. This will all be live for you later. There is a specific section on creating your 1220 profile. And then I have the link here and it'll walk you through the whole thing.
So this will be available like by the end of today, I think you said something
Correct.
like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
By end of day today. Yeah. There's a
Awesome.
couple of edits. I realize there's things you won't have access to, like registering for events. Those aren't going to be in the system until the end of July. So I'm going to move that off of like the tasks you need to do because you can't do something that's not there.
Okay,
I don't want to add to any confusion.
Thank you.
Awesome. Anybody else with questions?
Are we able to see any samples of resumes for different like previous students or anything like that for examples of like what they've used in the past that's worked?
Yeah, let me see. Want to see, I don't want to misspeak. I've made some edits, but I don't know what's in there. See if this shows you. Okay, yes. So one of the documents that you will have in the career Moodle that's also linked to this career page, when you go in to create your resume, okay, when you go in here, it's going to talk about writing bullets, the style guide, action verbs, and bullet structure. This is going to take you to this document here. And there are a few samples that we've kind of aggregated different bullet examples from people over the years. If you have a specific area you're looking to go into, like supply chain or whatnot, we can have conversations about that. And I can see based on prior students that I've worked with, if there's a more relevant resume for you, if that makes sense. Because some of these, right, if you're looking at stuff, like you said, it's all for marketing and you're trying to pivot out of that, you're going to want something different. So there's some good basic examples, but again, if you have an interest in a specific industry or job function, we can try to find you a more specific example. Other resume or initial, I guess, like internship seeking questions in general. No, you know everything you need to know. Fantastic. Makes my job easy. All right. Well, thank you all. It was lovely to see you. Again, I will have this recording and I will throw that up in both the announcements and in email. I will email you all once I have the career Moodle all set up and ready for you to go so that you can do the assignments and see what needs to be done by the 5th. Other than that, feel free to ping me if you have questions. We're definitely here to meet with you, talk with you before you arrive, especially, as we said, if you think you are interested in making a run at anything related to financial services, consulting, or some kind of a rotational program, which might recruit early. We would love to talk to you before you get here. All right. Thank you all very much, and I will see you next week.